Visit thehonestcarpenter.com and get your home-related questions answered by a trade expert. Hey everybody, I'm Ethan James with thehonestcarpenter.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how to replace railing balusters like the ones on this deck. So what happened to these balusters is that the dog got a little overexcited and chewed through about 10 of them. So I'm going to take these off and replace them with identical ones. Balusters can pretty much always be store-bought. They're like 1 1/4 thick and wide, and they range in lengths up to about 42 inches in length. And these days manufacturers are going ahead and they're putting this little miter detail on the bottom of them. In some cases they're putting it on both ends. These are square on one end and mitered on the bottom, which matches what we have for this porch. If you have an older house, in some cases these 1 1/4 balusters aren't going to work because they use much thicker balusters. 30 years ago even, usually they're like 1 1/2 by 1 1/2. These skinny ones with the rounded or coped edges are going to look funny, and if you have those older ones, you're going to have to make new balusters, probably out of treated lumber. But that's not the situation this time. So I'm just going to need to pop off 10 of these and replace them. I'll show you a couple really good tips for making that easy. One thing worth noting here, these were originally shot on with nails. I don't like to do that. It's not as strong over time. You can see me wobbling it with my hand. I'm going to replace them with screws. And there are just a couple things that you need to take into consideration when you're doing that. So we'll start with the demo, and I'll show you the easiest way to demo these balusters. So if these balusters were screwed on, I would just unscrew them from the other side. But in this case, they're nailed on. You can see the damage here. I'm going to take off any one of them with this chew damage from the dog. To get these off, really all you need is a 16-ounce hammer. Just go up near the top and the bottom of the thing, wherever it's nailed in, and just give it a good sharp hit. And then do the same at the bottom, let it fall off, and that's really all it takes to demo them if they're nailed in. And then the first step for replacing the baluster is to get it sized appropriately. You want your new balusters to be the same length as the existing ones. It just so happens that these were originally purchased 42-inch balusters, so I didn't have to cut these at all. I can just take them right up off my pile once I've snapped it open and begin attaching them. If your balusters are too long, you always kind of want to buy them too long if you can. You can cut them to length with a miter saw or a circular saw. Just pull a tape measurement on the existing balusters, top to bottom, and cut it off where you need to, and just remember to preserve the miter cut on the bottom, and you're probably going to want a square cut at the top, but always go with whatever the appearance of the balusters on your existing deck look like. Now, as for attachment, like I said, I want to use screws. In this case, I want to use a 2 1/2-inch screw that's long enough to get into and through our new baluster, and about 1 inch into the railing, and in this case the lower band on the existing deck. Sometimes your balusters will go through a second railing at the bottom. They won't extend all the way down to the band or the rim joist like this, but you just want to attach it to whatever the other ones are attached to. Use a screw, either a 2 1/2-inch, or you probably won't be able to get away with a 3-inch screw because it'll probably punch through the back of your railing. So 2 1/2s are good, and you want to make sure that you're pre-drilling these locations. I use an 1/8-inch bit. You can probably get away with a 9/64. That makes sure that when the screw drives in here, it's not going to split this long grain of the balusters, which once they dry out, they can become sort of brittle. And the other thing you want to do to make sure you don't split is something called countersinking. The screw has this conical head on it, and when that head goes through the surface of the lumber, it's going to force its way in there. That too can cause splitting. So you want to create a little conical depression in the face of the lumber that it acts as a little pocket that the head of the screw can sit in. And to do that, you can either use a countersink bit like this, which you can chuck into your drill and just put into your drilled hole, your pilot hole, and just bore it out a little bit. Or if you don't feel like changing bits, sometimes what I do is use my impact driver, and I just set the tip of it in my pilot hole and just run it around a little bit, and that's going to serve kind of the same purpose. It's going to clear a little pathway that the head of the screw can now go down and sit in. And you want to do that at the top and the bottom in your pre-drilled holes. And then you can even go ahead and just sort of turn the screw down in there. Got one down low, one up high, and then when you take it over, it'll be ready to install. Now for the attachment process itself, you got a few options. Obviously we just need to drive the screws in, but you want to make sure your spacing is right between the pickets beside it on either side of it. And there's a few ways of doing this. You can do it with the tape measure, but if you're working by yourself, it's kind of hard to hold the piece and measure from side to side. I kind of have a visual guide on this one because the gap where the old stain couldn't penetrate to kind of lets me know approximately where to put mine. If that wasn't there, there's another technique that I find really helpful. I make a custom spacer block that is the size, the average size of all the gaps around the deck, and I just hold it up there, and when I have two hands, I just bring the baluster up, clamp it to the side of this, and kind of holding everything in place with my left hand, I drill with my right, and that gets the spacing just right, and makes it uniform too, because you can use this thing over and over again. I've attached this little scab piece to it because they actually did quite large gaps between these balusters. You really only want about 3.5 inches, which is the width of a 2x4. In this case, they made them about 4, so I furred this one out a little bit with just a little scab piece. Just match with whatever's on the deck. In this case, they're about 4 1/8. So this will work. I'll get this one mounted, and then I'll be able to start on my other ones. There's my new baluster in place. Got screws set at the top and bottom. Go ahead and overdrive the screws just a little bit. If the wood's still wet, the screw will just kind of push its way in there into that little countersink that we made with the head of the impact driver. You do that top and bottom, and then you're kind of ensuring that you're getting something like a little bit more than 1 inch of screw fastener in, maybe like 1.25 inches into the rail, or in this case the band down below. And I'm just going to go around, repeat that process for about 9 more. This is really fast. You can knock out 10 balusters in, I don't know, 20 minutes or something like that. Yeah, and then once this treated lumber has breathed out the fluid that they treat it with, you'll be able to stain it. I did another video on that called Painting Treated Wood. I will link it in my end screen here. Check it out. There's a couple things you need to know about that. There are ways you can make that process go a little bit faster. But thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe below, and check in with thehonestcarpenter.com for more tips and articles. Thanks. We're now offering live video consultations and phone consultations to homeowners nationwide. To get your most important home-related questions answered by a trade expert, just visit thehonestcarpenter.com.